Alrighty, hi fifth graders. So for our writing assignments today, we are going to practice looking at different types of paragraphs. So last week we practiced identifying and writing topic sentences for paragraphs. This week we're going to look at the different types of paragraphs as we work on getting ready to fold in and write those paragraph understandings. So our first type of paragraph we're going to talk about today is expository. So in expository writing, you're basically explaining or talking about something without giving specific descriptive details. So it's like kind of like a how-to, or you're explaining or talking about something or going somewhere. So for example, Florida is a great place to vacation. You can do many things. First, you can go to the beach and swim. Second, you can visit the Everglades and maybe see an alligator. Finally, you can go to Disney World. It is so fun and there's so much to do. So again, with expository writing, you're not giving specific details, you're just explaining what something is, or talking about what something what something is about. And the next paragraph, however, is a little different. It's called a descriptive paragraph. So with descriptive writing, you are going to use the five senses: feel, smell, hear, touch, and taste to communicate those experiences about people, places, things, and thoughts. So in descriptive writing, you're being very specific and talking about how something is. So for example, the table was covered with my favorite desserts. The wonderful scents of homemade apple pie and chocolate cake wafted through the dining room. Piles of freshly baked sugar cookies filled lovely with platters in crescent bands. Chocolate, vanilla, and butter pecan ice cream sat in large containers next to steaming pitchers of luscious hot fudge and butterscotch. I would not be eating dinner when I got home. So obviously in this descriptive paragraph, we have the author who brings you in to make you smell the yummy pies and desserts, and makes you even kind of want to eat it, right? It makes you want to go get some ice cream and hot fudge. So descriptive writing, again, uses those five senses, gets you thinking specifically about what it is to describe it. In a narrative, you are telling a story. So a narrative is actually a process or an event, and it tells a story. It talks about something that happened, and it's usually uses transitional language. So you might see first, then, next, or finally, and you're definitely going to have first or second, third person. So Esperanza Rising is a narrative, and the person telling the story is obviously Esperanza. So she is telling the story of her experience going after Papa died, right? So, and here we have, last summer was a memorable one for my family because we visited our relatives in Italy. First, we made many preparations for the trip, including buying lots of gifts. When the long-awaited day came, we came to the airport. Our flight was a smooth one. At last, we arrived in Rome, and we were greeted by at least a dozen aunts, uncles, and cousins. I had not seen some of them for years, and there were many I had never met. Our visit with them was one of the most wonderful experiences of my life. When we finally left for home, I was already planning my next trip. So again, narratives, you see the first, then at last, but it's a story, right? So beginning to end, it's a process. So it's kind of different from those other two of a descriptive and an expository, because you're telling a story. You could definitely use descriptive language in a narrative, but a narrative is from point one to another. Our next one is persuasive writing. So persuasive writing presents an opinion. So you guys have probably done this in your opinion writing when you answered questions like, should you wear a uniform to school? Or should we be allowed to have soda at school? So usually you have facts and details in persuasive writing because you're trying to get somebody to believe or to go with what you're saying. So like in this one, it's talking about the school year being extended. Math and science scores of American students are well below those of their counterparts in industrialized countries. Many young people do not write competently in their primary language and fail to master a foreign language. Young children often forget basic skills after the long summer vacation and need weeks of review. Proposals to extend the school year should be taken seriously if we are to remain competitive with other nations. So this argument here was to make the school year longer and take away some of that summer break, right? Clearly very different from the narrative and the descriptive, where in both of those cases, they're kind of like telling a story instead of pulling in those facts. And finally, guys, the last one we're going to look at is compare and contrast writing. And this is important because you're going to be writing a compare contrast by the end of this week. And it's also important because of this is one of the most challenging paragraphs that students deal with. And a compare contrast uses two or more ideas that are similar and different. So in this example, I wrote about Esperanza and Miguel and how they respond to Papa's death. So Esperanza breaks down, she's not able to have her party, but Miguel tries to stay strong and keeps working. Also, while Esperanza stays in her room and doesn't come out, Miguel helps in the house. On the other hand, they both behaved differently. Though they both behaved differently, both Esperanza and Miguel were sad after Papa was killed, and they both miss him. So it talks about how they're both the same, both different, and how they're the same. So, alrighty, so here's our 5 different paragraphs that we talked about. We talked about expository, we talked about descriptive, narrative, compare contrast, and persuasive. So here's different topics for each one. So like examples of an expository paragraph, you might write about friendship or personal goals or a recipe for Momo, okay? You write descriptive, remember you're describing things. So maybe you're going to describe your perfect pet, or you might describe your hero, or you can even describe your favorite holiday. In a narrative, you're telling a story from beginning, middle, end. So you might have a story about a scary event, you might tell a story about making breakfast, or you might tell a story about going to a party you recently went to, right? In compare and contrast, you look at 2 different things and you write about how they're the same and how they're different. So a fish and a bird, Esperanza and Miguel are sweet and salty. And then finally, in your persuasive writing, you're going to try to convince the reader to agree with you. So you want the reader to say, yes, I agree. So you might write about wearing uniforms, like presidential elections that's coming up. Should we vote for Trump or should we vote for Biden? And choosing your favorite candy. So those are all different topics. Now what you're going to do is you are actually going to have the chance to match the topics with the different paragraphs. You're going to do something very similar to here to what I have done. If you need to rewatch this video for support, you definitely can. This video is accessible to you. And if you have questions, remember our week goal is to take risks. So please ask for support if you need it. You can also ask each other and talk to each other about help. Alrighty, kiddos, I will see you soon, 5th grade. Have fun.